Dr. Wendell Tully, husband, father, ingenious inventor of the spacer, capable of shrinking objects and humans. But as we dive in deeper into what it took to get to his success, we'll learn he was willing to do anything, even murder. Before we get into this video, please consider subscribing if you like more scary gaming content. In the world of Grounded, you play as a teenager who is lost in what seems to be in the forest, but it's later revealed that is not the case. You have no clue where you are or how you ended up there in the first place. As you progress in the game, you find a very important character in a laboratory found in an oak tree. As you enter, you find the laboratory in disarray and shambles. Inside, there's a robot named Burkle. You find out the robot and laboratories were created by Dr. Wendell Tully, set up to do research on a new invention called the spacer.
I am Burkle, acting science manager for this project.
This machine is capable of shrinking humans to the size of insects. These experiments and tests were done by Dr. Tully while working for a company called Omnient. It becomes very obvious the experiments resulted in multiple failures.
Omnient Practical Technologies, Dr. Wendell Tully, Science Division, log 87.12.18, 87.12.19. Well, here goes nothing. Supplemental log, complete failure. Oh, why do I even try?
Eventually Omnient firing Dr. Wendell. More on that later on. Dr. Tully's refusal and letting the project go, and realizing that he's very close to something groundbreaking, something that could finally give him the recognition that he so desperately desires, begins to pour all of his focus in the success of the spacer. Dr. Tully, also a husband and father with 2 kids, Sarah and Thor, he becomes very adamant from the start that his family begins to feel some sort of abandonment.
Today, Trudy asked, or rather insisted, I take a break from my work for a family day. She just doesn't understand how important the work is. When we got home, it was straight back to work. After another argument, of course.
Due to his desire for his projects, we get some sort of insight that his family ties are becoming of no importance to him, that his personal life is being consumed by his work, forcing even his children to stay away from the backyard, as he has set up multiple laboratories and stations around the backyard, in fear of his children destroying it.
Early test runs on the zipline system have produced mixed results. Things were going well until Sarah threw yet another toy into the hedge. I told them both. No baseballs, no flingman discs, no more throwing. I'll need to find a way to strengthen the zip lines, and I've forbidden the children from playing in the yard, temporarily, of course. Dinner will be, I would say, awkward, I suspect.
While exploring the backyard, you come upon a milk carton with the image of 4 missing teens, proving that there are multiple previous victims before your arrival. At this point, you found out already that the backyard is of Dr. Wendell Tully. Even though it's never explicitly said that this is his home, many objects can be found around the backyard leading that it is. The D&D inspired game Minotaurs and Myrmidons belongs to Thor, the son of Wendell Tully. A proof of termination or a fired slip can be found in the trash can area. Also, Wendell Tully's own spacer watch can be found on a table in the porch area, along with an audio tape describing that this was his favorite area to look at the backyard.
The sun is setting on our yard, and it brings back so many memories. Sitting in this chair, my favorite chair.
When completing the pond lab, you can find an audio tape describing how Wendell Tully now sees his family as sort of an obstacle.
This time you've gone too far, Wendell Tully. You missed Thanksgiving dinner. Never in all the years of knowing her has she given me such a cold, immovable ultimatum. My science or my family. If I could just prove to them the wonders that are so close now, they would understand, wouldn't they? And if they did not, perhaps they never understood me at all.
We start to see many of the bad consequences of Wendell focusing on his work instead of his family. We also know the wife, Trudy, did eventually leave Wendell and took the kids. When exploring the pond itself, a wedding ring can be found, most likely thrown into the pond by Trudy herself during one of their many fights. As we mentioned before, we know that there are 5 total characters. There are only 4 playable currently in the game. We know of an existing 5th character because of the Omnient transport case you originally arrived in. The 5th teenager is still missing. A base area can be found with the farewell letter, proving the existence of a teenager that most likely died in the backyard. Eventually, we do confront the leader of Omnient, Director Schmector.
Poor Wendell. Lost your job, Trudy's left you, took the kids too.
Oh no.
Left you with nothing but your work.
Even though there was clearly some friction between the two of them, they both willingly and collaborated in the abduction and experimentation of teenagers. At least that's the point I'm trying to make in this video. We need to remember that when we first find Wendell Tully, he's in a deep raisin state. One of the many side effects is amnesia and dementia. Even though he himself doesn't ever admit it, we know for a fact that he worked with Director Schmector at one point. So at some point we either know they worked together or Director Schmector was overseeing the work Wendell was doing. Wendell Tully's original purpose for the spacer was to shrink objects. During the boss fight with Director Schmector, it is revealed from himself that Wendell Tully knew of the experimentation on children. Keep in mind that characters you play as are said to be anywhere from the ages of 12 to 13.
At least I'm not experimenting on children!
Oh, but isn't that just what you've been doing?
Yeah.
Hiding in your little garden and using these children to fight your battles for you because you never fight them yourself?
So can we say that Wendell had any part of this, or does he just not remember right now? When we first meet Wendell Tully in a deep raisin state, this being a side effect from adults using the spacer, in which the body begins to shrivel and dry up like a raisin. Tully almost accepts this as his fate or karma. After meeting you, of course, he vows to make things right. Once you complete the game, it's very weird that they kind of glossed over the fact that we still don't know where the other missing children are. For instance, the ones from the milk carton. I do want to bring up that milk carton again. If it is presumed that this is his backyard, the milk carton being thrown into the backyard is almost like it paints a picture that Wendell Tully threw it there himself, maybe after not trying to accept the fact that these children actually have families and are going to be missed by people. We also need to remember that at this point he's begun to disassociate himself from his real life and the world of the backyard. We know that he started to see his family as an obstacle, so I wonder if there was a connection between being okay with taking children from their families and thinking that there was going to be no harm done, because into his eyes and to Director Schmector they were just lab rats. We also do get confirmation that after the investigation happened that there were dead teens found.
Tried to keep a lid on all of it, but the whole story came out about the kidnappings, about the dead teenagers.
So they were, yeah, dead.
About
So I was
Anna.
right. Were they ones from the milk carton, or they found in other labs, or were they even found at the Ominid headquarters? We do see in a cutscene that Schmector really has no regard for life, and most likely has killed other teens and disposed of them at Ominid. Okay. Oh, she feels worried.
Too bad for you, little ones.
Oh,
Prepare the specimens for termination.
That's crazy. He's just abducting kids and killing them off like nothing.
This isn't what I signed up for.
Well, technically, you're in too deep, miss. You literally killed children at this point. I mean, what you gonna do now? The only thing I can think of why Dr. Wendell Tully himself got away with it and only Director Schmector got in trouble was because Director Schmector was the leader of Ominid. And honestly, the discovery of a machine that could shrink objects and people was enough to overlook that Wendell himself participated in these experiments, which honestly is not something that's uncommon in real life. For example, the Tuskegee syphilis studies from 1932 to 1972. The U.S. Public Health Service conducted an unethical study on African American men in Alabama.
Mistrust in the medical system rooted in history, like the Tuskegee study in 1932, a 40-year experiment where nearly 400 black men living with syphilis were denied treatment.
Who were not informed that they were infected with syphilis and were denied treatment even though the discovery of penicillin existed. Which is even crazier when you learn that similar examples where research was conducted and a conclusion was made,
The conclusion concluded.
regardless if it harmed or even killed someone. Majority of the time those actually conducting the research never face any accountability, because of course the research was still publicized and used for government and or healthcare reasons.
Public health officials wanting to see the effect of the disease untreated. As a result, more than 100 men died from syphilis or related complications.
The Tuskegee syphilis study, which resulted in a $10 million lawsuit, that settled, but those conducting the research never faced any actual jail time because this was a government-funded project. The research done by Dr. Tully and Director Schmector had some sort of connection to the government. We have proof of this that Director Schmector was in talks to the government or multiple governments around the world.
Shrinking inanimate objects will change the world, no doubt. But people, Governments of the world will bankrupt each other for a mere taste of this technology.
But now, since this blew up and everybody found out about the dead teenagers, they needed someone to blame. Who better yet to blame the person that actually didn't come up with the invention, but to let the man free so that he could potentially continue his work? Dr. Wendell Tully. And of course, I get it. I know what you're probably thinking. This is such a, a huge stretch, but it's obvious that if you play the game, you know that Wendell Tully actually got fired before the abductions and disappearances happened. And of course, he had his own assumptions that he was feeling like he was being watched, and also the disappearances of teenagers began to happen. When we first meet him, he was super surprised that we were teenagers, and he got his confirmation that his theory was correct. I'm solely basing this off the fact that the possibility of him not remembering and him fully being immersed in his work and his being okay with leaving his family to focus on his work is like the perfect, mixture of somebody who is willing to do whatever they need so they could get fame, recognition, or whatever you want to call it. But feel free, and I encourage you to poke holes in this theory. Leave it in the comments. I think it's super fun entertainment. At the end of the day, it is just a game, but for some reason I love looking at games in a darker tone. If you enjoyed this crazy video, please consider subscribing, and if you know of a game that you want me to play and to look into next, please leave it down below in the comments. And until next time, I wish you luck in the next one. Goodbye.